Today we're going to have a brief lesson on writing the introduction. There is a link here if you need it to a full document on writing the introduction and conclusion, but I just put it in the slide so that everything is in one place and easily accessible. So when you're writing the introduction, you want to use this visual of the inverted triangle. This has always been the most helpful thing for me when I'm thinking about writing an intro, because in writing we don't have a lot of formulas, so if I can have a visual, that helps me. And when you write an introduction, you go from more general information to the most specific information. So if you see at the bottom here, your thesis is the most precise statement of your essay. Every other sentence in your essay should in some way relate back to your thesis. If it doesn't, you should get rid of the sentence. So your thesis is the direct claim that expresses the main idea of your paper. In this case, your thesis will also be the central idea of Amanda Gorman's poem, The Hill We Climb. So as I said, on this task you'll provide the central idea statement as your thesis. And I'll show you how I did that naturally in my example on the next slide. So at the top, when you begin your intro, because obviously when you write your intro, it doesn't look like this triangle, it looks like a paragraph, so it looks more like a square. But what you want to start with is a hook, right? So all your teachers like, start with a hook. You can do a quote or a definition or a corny question. I say corny question because they always end up being corny. For me, I always like to start with a more general, interesting idea. So it doesn't have to be something that's like, did you know that 99 out of 100 people do blah, blah, blah. It can just be something that's a general overview of your topic that is interesting for some reason or that gets your audience engaged. And then in that second section, that's that pink-purple color, you'll start to get more specific about the details of your paper. So a lot of times, like I would think, if I have 2 body paragraphs, I want to give like 1 sentence per paragraph that's sort of a lead-in that's interesting to those paragraphs. So you'll start to go from general to more specific information. So you're making connections from that interesting statement that you started with to get your reader to start thinking about relating them to your thesis. And in this case, you'll probably want to just provide a general overview of the poem. So you might talk about Amanda Gorman and how she spoke at the inauguration and what the poem reveals about the state our country was in. Any of those things. So you're just making connections to lead into your thesis statement. And really, I can't give you too many leading ideas because all of your thesis statements or central ideas will probably be a little bit different. So as you work through this, I'll try to check in and see where you're at and offer you some suggestions. The best way I can show this in practice is by providing you an example. So I gave you 2 intros, and normally if we were in class, I'd probably have us do like a day worth of work on intros, and I would have you guys highlight, but because of time, we don't have that leisure. So I'm just going to give you the samples, and hopefully you can kind of follow these samples and fill in the blanks even if you need to as you work. So my first sample is based on William Wordsworth's poem, I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud, and I started by saying, in William Wordsworth's poem, I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud, the speaker describes how he finds joy while traveling alone in nature. So like I said, this isn't like a super attention-grabbing hook, but I'm just giving a 1-sentence main idea statement. So what is the poem about? And really this is different than my central idea because I say he, the speaker. And remember, in your central idea, it won't be text specific. So a main idea is text specific, central idea is not. And then the purple is my middle statement. So again, I'm just giving kind of general information about the title and the speaker and what happens in the poem to lead to my thesis. So I said, as the title states, the speaker wanders alone, like a cloud might float alone in the sky, until he stumbles upon a field of daffodils. The speaker admires the beauty of the flowers that he views as company. Look at that, I already have a typo. Let me fix that. And no longer feels lonely in their presence. And then you see I have in green my central idea statement, but it's not the full sentence because I had to transition to my central idea statement. So I said, throughout the poem, nature is personified to show that the simplicity of nature can bring joy, beauty, and comfort. And since in your essay you're going to be writing about literary elements, I mentioned the specific literary element that I'm focusing on. Now you might talk about 1, you might talk about 2, you might even talk about 3 different literary elements So you might include that information or you might not. Okay? So you see, basically, I'm talking about the speaker, the title, giving general overview. What's important is you plan before you write, because also I'm making sure that in my intro, I'm not stepping on my own toes and including information that's going to be found in my body paragraphs. I'm drawing interest, but I'm offering something that I don't talk about necessarily or analyze in my body paragraphs. Okay, my second example is from Harlem by Langston Hughes, or based on that poem. I took part of this from Miss Kelly. She had written a sample, so I want to give her some cred, and then I added some of my own. So the first sentence is hers, and she was trying to do a more attention-grabbing hook that relates to the full audience. So it says, dreams motivate and inspire us to achieve our goals to become better people. So that was the hook. That was that blue section. And really she was trying to relate to her reader, because I think we all have goals, and that would draw the interest. And then she introduces the poem and the author, which is always important. I know some of your teachers in 9th grade might have focused on having the tag, the title, author, genre, in the central idea statement. That's not really appropriate here. It's more appropriate to add your tag earlier in the piece when you're introducing the poem. So this says, in the poem Harlem by Langston Hughes, the author uses imagery to develop and reinforce what happens when dreams are cast aside or deferred. So again, you see that sort of summary statement. And also here I've introduced the literary element that I'm going to focus on in the intro. And then I continue a little more of a deeper analysis. The title Harlem reflects the hardships of being African American in the 1950s, perhaps alluding to the dream of racial equality being continually delayed. So you have a little bit of my interpretation here, because not everyone interprets every poem in the same way, but I'm also just providing that background as to what I think the title means. And then, again, there is imagery in this poem, and I said through vivid imagery and similes, so I'm focusing on the literary elements that I'll be presenting in my analysis in the body paragraph. Hughes conveys that the injustice of racial inequality has led to hopelessness and despair for those who have had their dreams put off. All right, and that is my central idea statement. All right, so hopefully you can follow some of those as a guide, one or the other of the samples as a guide to help you understand how to format your introduction, since this is the first time I've done any explicit teaching on it. Please let me know if you have any questions.